Recently, I was walking down Broadway in New York while on a layover there. Just after I had passed the famous bull statue, I came along several silver strips in the pavement. These depict the many honorable persons who had received a ticker tape parade down Broadway. Among the names were famous ones like Theodore Roosevelt, Queen Elizabeth, the crew of Apollo 11, and I had to pause there to read the long text. Douglas Wrong Way Corrigan for his flight from New York to Ireland instead of his intended destination of California. Wait, what? I had never heard of this story, and so today, here it is for you. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride through history. Welcome to airspace. Douglas Corrigan was born in Galveston, Texas in 1907. He was the youngest of 5 children and grew up in a working-class family that was of Irish descent. In October 1925, 18-year-old Corrigan saw people paying to be taken for short rides in a Curtiss JN-4 biplane near his home. He paid $2.50 for his own ride. Fascinated by the sensation of flight, he began flying lessons a week later. After 20 lessons, he made his first solo flight on March 25, 1926. Corrigan became an enthusiastic aviator and loved to work with planes. Luckily for him, Ryan Aeronautical Company, a significant aircraft manufacturer at the time, operated at the airfield from where he had learned to fly. He was hired for their San Diego factory immediately. There, Corrigan was responsible for assembling the wing and installing the fuel tanks and instrument panel of Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis, the plane that would make the world's first non-stop transatlantic flight only months later. It would finally be Corrigan who pulled the chocks from the wheels of the Spirit of St. Louis when Lindbergh took off from San Diego to New York to prepare for his historic flight. After Lindbergh's success in May 1927, Corrigan decided to duplicate it and selected Ireland as his objective. He discussed the idea with friends and mentioned that he intended to make his dream happen, whether he would receive permission or not. When Ryan Aeronautical moved to St. Louis in October 1928, Corrigan stayed in San Diego as a mechanic for a newly formed flight school. But with more than 50 students flying each day, Corrigan could only get flight time during his lunch break. During his short flights, he loved to perform aerobatic stunts. The company, however, disapproved and prohibited him from performing stunts in company aircraft. Corrigan did not care too much for his employer's disdain for his shenanigans, and he simply flew to a field further south, where his stunts could not be seen by his employers. Corrigan moved from job to job as an aircraft mechanic, using his employer's planes to develop his flying skills. He gained his transfer pilot certificate in October 1929 and started a passenger service in 1930 with a friend, flying between small East Coast towns. The most lucrative part of the business turned out to be barnstorming displays, promoting short recreational plane rides. Despite business success, Corrigan decided to return to California after a few years. In 1933, he spent $310, which is equivalent to $6,500 in today's money, on a used Curtiss Robin OX-5 monoplane and flew it home, where he again worked as an aircraft mechanic and began to modify the Robin for a transatlantic flight. As the crafty mechanic that he was, he decided to install an engine that he had salvaged by combining 2 old ones from another plane. This Frankenstein engine provided 165 instead of just 90 horsepower. Corrigan also added several extra fuel tanks to extend the range of his plane. One of these tanks prominently sat in front of the windshield of his plane, making it impossible to see straight ahead. Corrigan's vision in flight was therefore limited to the side windows only. In 1935, Corrigan applied to the Bureau of Air Commerce, seeking permission to make a non-stop flight from New York to Ireland. The application was rejected. His plane was deemed unsound for a non-stop transatlantic trip, but it was certified to the lower standard for cross-country journeys. Corrigan was dismayed but did not stop tinkering on his aircraft. Over the next 2 years, he made repeated modifications and reapplications for full certification, but none succeeded. In 1937, after safety standards had increased significantly, his aircraft was refused renewal of its license because it was deemed to be too unstable for safe flight. Exasperated, he returned to California in his plane, trying to evade the regulators. But of course, regulators notified the authorities in his hometown, and Corrigan's plane was grounded for 6 months. The following summer, he had finally repaired his aircraft and was granted clearance to fly from California to Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, New York. With a newly repaired engine, Corrigan managed to arrive unscathed in New York after 27 hours. The tanks of his plane were almost empty since a fuel leak had developed along the way, filling the cockpit with dangerous fumes. Upon arrival in New York, Corrigan decided that fixing the fuel leak would take too long and that he would start his return trip soon without fixing it. When he asked the airport manager which runway he should use for his departure, the manager replied that Corrigan could use any runway, just not the one that would take him over the manager's administration building on departure. This was probably a jab at the sad state Corrigan's plane was in. Finally, Corrigan took off from runway 06 towards the northeast, armed with 320 gallons of fuel and 16 gallons of oil. In the cockpit, he carried a toolbox, 2 chocolate bars, 2 boxes of fig bars, and a quart of water. Surely, Corrigan would have loved to have better meals on his flight. Had today's sponsor, Factor 75, existed back then, maybe he would have brought one of their weekly rotating 27 plus meal options, or 33 plus add-ons like smoothies, shakes or desserts on his flight. As the busy aviator he was, he surely would have loved the fresh, ready-made meals that are delivered to one's doorstep when you sign up with Factor. All of Factor's chef-created meals are fresh, never frozen, and designed by dietitians to ensure every meal is packed with premium, science-backed nutritional quality. No more meal prep, no more dishes, no more unhealthy fast food. Factor offers the most convenient way to eat well while eating right. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use the code on screen for 50% off of your first box. Now let's get back to the video. After watching Corrigan depart from New York in the early morning hours on July 17, 1938, spectators were concerned to see him flying eastward instead of turning left towards California after departure. Minutes later, the plane disappeared into dense clouds on the eastern horizon. 28 hours and 13 minutes later, Corrigan landed at Baldonnel Aerodrome near Dublin, Ireland. Immediately, Corrigan claimed that his compass had malfunctioned and that he had only noticed the error after 10 hours, when the cloud cover eased up a bit. At this time, it would have been too late to return to New York, according to him. The American journalist H.R. Knickerbocker, who interviewed Corrigan after landing, summarized the feat in a perfect way. You may say that Corrigan's flight could not be compared to Lindbergh's in a sensational appeal as the first solo flight across the ocean. Yes, but in another way, the obscure little Irishman's flight was the more audacious of the two. Lindbergh had a plane specially constructed, the finest money could buy. He had lavish financial backing, friends to help him at every turn. Corrigan had nothing but his own ambition, courage and ability. His plane, a 9-year-old Curtiss Robin, was the most wretched-looking jalopy. As I looked over it at the Dublin Aerodrome, I really marveled that anyone should have been rash enough to even go in the air with it, much less try to fly the Atlantic. He built it, or rebuilt it, practically as a boy would build a scooter out of a soapbox and a pair of old roller skates. It looked like it. The nose of the engine hood was a mass of patches soldered by Corrigan himself into a crazy quilt design. The door behind which Corrigan crouched for 28 hours was fastened together with a piece of baling wire. The reserve gasoline tanks put together by Corrigan left him so little room that he had to sit hunched forward with his knees cramped and not enough window space to see the ground when landing. At one point, a fuel leak had developed, and Mr. Corrigan had to resort to a screwdriver to punch a hole in the cockpit floor to allow the liquid to drain. But not everyone was as thrilled about the alleged accidental transatlantic flight. Regulators were furious and sent a long and therefore expensive telegram listing Corrigan's misdeeds to the authorities. Despite the extent of the illegality of his endeavor, he received a rather mild sentence. His pilot's license was suspended for 14 days. Corrigan did not care too much, since he must have thought once is enough. He had his plane shipped back to New York on a steamship, where it arrived on the 14th and final day of his suspension. His return to New York was marked with great celebration. Corrigan's story had inspired many Americans, and the city of New York even decided to throw him a ticker tape parade, an honor usually reserved to statesmen and legendary personalities like Charles Lindbergh. Most notably, more people attended his parade than the one thrown for Charles Lindbergh. He was also given a parade in Chicago and later met President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House. Wasting no time, Corrigan capitalized on his newfound fame by writing the book That's My Story, just in time for the Christmas market in late 1938. It sold very well. Also, he endorsed several Wrong Way products, such as a watch that ran counterclockwise. In the following year, he played himself in the movie biography The Flying Irishman. The salary he earned from the movie was more than he would have made by working for 30 years at his airfield job. When World War II happened, Corrigan tested bombers and flew for the US Air Transport Command. After the war, he joined a small regional airline as a pilot. In 1950, Corrigan bought an orange grove in Santa Ana. He lived there with his wife and 3 sons. According to him, he knew nothing about raising oranges, but he just copied what his neighbors were doing and managed to do just fine. Much later in life, in 1988, aviation enthusiasts asked if they could retrieve and refurbish his old plane from its hangar. Corrigan allowed it, and when it was later presented at an air show, he was so excited that the organizers placed guards at the wings and considered tethering the plane to a police car to prevent him from taking off in it. Corrigan eventually died in December 1995 at age 88. He had lived a colorful life, to say the least. Up until his last breath, he stuck to his story. According to him, his transatlantic flight had been entirely accidental. Corrigan's flight remains one of the greatest feats in aviation history. It captured the public's imagination and inspired a generation of pilots and adventurers. Corrigan himself became a folk hero, a symbol of the American spirit of adventure and exploration. His flight also highlighted the importance of perseverance and determination. Despite setbacks and challenges, Corrigan never gave up on his dream of flying across the Atlantic. His determination and courage continue to inspire people to this day. Now it's time for you to decide. Do you think Corrigan's flight was accidental, or did he plan it all along? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to check out my Patreon in the description or the pinned comment. I have many cool benefits for you waiting there. That said, thank you so much for watching, and see you all in the next one.